What really happens when someone awakens spiritually? What do they notice that others pass by without ever realizing? The very question is a paradox, because it suggests that the awakened are looking at a world entirely different from ours, as though they had special access to some hidden dimension. Yet the truth is the opposite. They are seeing the same reality you see every day, but without the fog of distortion, without the constant interference of mental chatter. Awakening is not about adding anything new to your experience, but about removing the filters that dull it. It is the moment when the ordinary suddenly shines, with a brilliance so intense that it feels extraordinary. Imagine walking through life, convinced you know what everything is, and then one day noticing that your knowledge has been little more than labels and assumptions. The awakened person does not live in another world. They live in this one, but they live in it directly. This is why their perception seems so baffling to others. People expect secrets, revelations, and mystical visions, but the essence of awakening is found in the simplest things: the sound of the wind, the taste of water, the act of breathing. To most, these moments are overlooked as trivial, yet for the awakened, they reveal the very fabric of existence. And while we are busy searching for meaning in distant philosophies, exotic practices, or future promises, we miss the fact that the truth is already unfolding here and now. There are clear signs that point to this shift in perception, signs that once noticed cannot be unseen. They are not reserved for monks on mountaintops or saints in isolation. They are available to anyone, in every culture, in every moment. The tragedy is that most ignore them, believing awakening must be something rare, dramatic, or otherworldly. But the path is hidden in plain sight, waiting for those who are willing to pause, to look, and to truly see. 7 signs mark this transformation, and though they are simple, they carry the power to completely change how one experiences life. When most people think about spiritual awakening, they imagine visions of angels, hidden dimensions, or extraordinary supernatural experiences that separate the awakened from the ordinary. This assumption itself is the greatest misunderstanding. Awakening is not about gaining something new or reaching into a mystical realm that others cannot access. It is not about secret doors to parallel realities or messages whispered from beyond. It is, in fact, the opposite of all that. The awakened person has not added anything to their vision. They have subtracted the endless commentary of the ego. They do not possess special powers that others lack. What they have discovered is a way of perceiving reality without the filters that the mind constantly imposes. Think about the way you look at the world on an ordinary day. You walk down the street and you see houses, cars, trees, people. Instantly, your mind classifies everything. That's a tree, you say. That's a car. That's a stranger. With every label, you feel as though you understand what you are looking at, but in truth you have only touched the surface. The label is a substitute, a shortcut that prevents you from noticing the sheer depth of what is before you. Awakening removes that shortcut and forces you to encounter the raw presence of reality. The tree is no longer reduced to a word or a concept. It becomes a living mystery, full of texture, movement, and being. The person walking past you is no longer just a stranger to categorize and ignore. They are a presence unfolding in this same moment of existence. This is why awakened perception seems so unusual to those who remain in the trance of thought. They believe awakening must mean adding visions and miracles, but the true miracle is seeing what has always been here. When the interference of the ego fades, when the voice that says, "I know what this is," quiets down, the world reveals itself with a vividness that is both ordinary and astonishing. It is not something extra. It is the real unveiled. To understand what spiritual awakening truly means, it helps to move away from abstract definitions and step into the clarity of metaphor. Imagine for a moment that you are sitting in a restaurant and the waiter hands you a beautifully designed menu. You study the words, the descriptions, even the pictures. You think you know the dishes because you have read about them, perhaps even memorized the details. But no matter how vivid the menu may seem, it is not the meal itself. You cannot taste the flavors, feel the textures, or be nourished by reading descriptions. Awakening is the difference between endlessly studying menus and finally taking the first bite. Most of us live in the world of menus, satisfied with concepts and symbols, while the awakened person is eating the meal of reality, directly and without substitution. Another image to consider is the ocean. For most of life, you have only seen photographs of it. You recognize its blue color. You know the shape of the waves. You might even have read about its depth and power. But then comes the day when you stand at the shore, walk into the water, and the waves crash against your body. You taste the salt on your lips. You feel the pull of the current, and you realize how utterly inadequate the photographs were. That moment of direct immersion is what awakening feels like. It is not that the ocean was hidden before, it was always there, but you had mistaken a representation for the thing itself. A third image comes from watching a child encounter the world. A child discovering a butterfly does not need a scientific name or a list of facts to be struck with wonder. The sheer sight of its wings fluttering in the air is enough to capture their full presence. They are immersed in the experience, not separated by concepts. Over time, adults lose this raw immediacy, trading direct seeing for knowledge, categories, and definitions. Awakening is a return to that childlike clarity, not childish ignorance, but the freshness of perception before the ego interrupts. These metaphors remind us that the awakened person is not living in a fantasy, but in the simple, direct experience we have all overlooked. We move through life in a kind of waking dream, convinced we are seeing reality, when in fact we are only interacting with the symbols and concepts we have created about it. The human mind is trained from an early age to reduce the infinite richness of experience into manageable categories, words, and labels. This conditioning becomes so automatic that we forget it is happening at all. You meet a person, and instead of truly seeing them, you file them away under judgments, roles, and assumptions. Friend, stranger, colleague, threat. You encounter a flower, and instead of marveling at its form, fragrance, and presence, you simply think, rose. That instant substitution of concept for reality is so pervasive that we rarely notice it, yet it governs almost every moment of our lives. We live surrounded by reality, but imprisoned in our thoughts about reality, never directly engaging with what is actually here. This is the trance of the collective mind. Each individual participates in it, and together we reinforce it, mistaking language and ideas for truth itself. We have become hypnotized by the chatter of our own thinking, lulled into believing that the voice in our head is the same as the world outside of it. And the tragedy is that this trance robs life of its immediacy and vitality. What could be a vivid, direct encounter with existence is instead a dull routine of labels and mental commentary. We confuse the map for the territory, the description for the thing described, the memory for the living moment. This is why awakening is so radical. It is the shock of realizing that what you have been calling reality is only a shadow, and that behind the curtain of words lies a living presence that you have been missing all along. Spiritual awakening is nothing more and nothing less than the breaking of this trance, the recognition that thoughts are not the world, and that reality has been waiting for you to notice it directly. The revelation at the heart of spiritual awakening is not a single insight, but a constellation of recognitions that arrive like waves, each dissolving another layer of illusion. These recognitions can be described as 7 clear signs, signals that point to a shift in perception so profound that life itself is experienced in an entirely new way. They are not exotic or mystical, but deeply ordinary truths that most of us overlook. To ignore them is to remain asleep, but to recognize them is to step into a freedom that was always present. The first sign is the ability to see reality without conceptual filters. Ordinarily, when you look at a tree, you do not really see the tree. You see the word tree, the categories attached to it, the uses and associations your mind has stored. But when awakening happens, those filters fall away. You see not the idea of a tree, but the living presence of it, the play of sunlight on its leaves, the movement of branches in the breeze, the silent fact of its being. This shift might seem small, yet it transforms perception. The world is no longer a dead collection of names. It becomes a living mystery in which every detail glows with significance. The second sign is recognizing that thoughts are not reality. For most of us, life is mediated entirely through the mind's commentary. We confuse our thoughts about the ocean with the ocean itself, our descriptions of love with love itself. but thoughts are only representations, as inadequate as a photograph when compared to the force of crashing waves. To awaken is to see this distinction clearly. You realize that the constant stream of ideas is not the same as direct experience. This realization frees you from being trapped in endless stories and allows you to step into the immediacy of life as it is. The third sign is perceiving the illusion of the separate self. From childhood, we are taught to identify with the voice in our head, the narrator that says, "I like this" or "I fear that." We build an image of ourselves as a bounded ego, sealed inside the skin, separate from the world outside. Awakening shows this to be a fiction, a convincing one perhaps, but still an illusion. You begin to see that the self is not a solid entity, but a process, a character in the play of consciousness. What you truly are is not the ego, but the awareness in which the ego appears. This realization dissolves the heavy burden of defending a fragile identity and opens you to a deeper sense of being. The fourth sign is the experience of unity with the whole. What once appeared divided into opposites, life and death, self and other, inside and outside, now reveals itself as interdependent aspects of a single process. Just as a wave cannot exist without the ocean, you cannot exist apart from the universe. The divisions were convenient constructs, but awakening shows their arbitrariness. When you breathe in, the air becomes you. When you breathe out, you become the air. When you see this, separation loses its hold, and compassion flows naturally, for harming another is felt as harming yourself. The fifth sign is sensing the intrinsic intelligence of nature. The ego believes it is in control, making decisions, directing life. But in awakening you see that life is already happening with a wisdom far beyond the mind's grasp. Your heart beats without your command, your wounds heal without your intervention. Grass grows, stars move, seasons change, all without an overseer. This same intelligence is what animates you. Rather than being a separate controller, you are an expression of this vast intelligence. Realizing this relieves the anxiety of control and invites a trust in the unfolding of existence. The sixth sign is liberation from the prison of time. Most people live in regrets of the past or worries about the future, rarely present to what is happening now. Awakening reveals that the past and future are only thoughts occurring in the present. Life never happens anywhere but here, in this moment. This recognition is profoundly freeing. It does not deny memory or planning, but it prevents them from being mistaken for reality. The awakened person lives in the immediacy of now, finding sufficiency and even perfection in the present moment. The seventh and final sign is discovering yourself as consciousness itself. You are not the passing stream of thoughts, not the body that changes, not even the stories you tell about who you are. You are the awareness in which all of this arises. This awareness has no beginning or end, no boundary, no limitation. It is the silent witness, the open space in which sensations, emotions, and experiences come and go. To awaken is to rest in this recognition, to know yourself not as a temporary character, but as the very field of presence in which the universe unfolds. These 7 signs are not exotic achievements reserved for a chosen few. They are invitations to recognize what has always been true. They dismantle the illusions that keep us trapped and reveal the reality that has been here all along. To see them is to awaken from the dream, to live not in concepts, but in direct contact with the mystery of existence. To ignore them is to keep wandering through life with eyes half closed, mistaking shadows for the real. But once glimpsed, these signs cannot be forgotten, for they carry the unmistakable fragrance of truth. They are the markers of a shift that, though subtle, changes everything about the way life is lived. And when you recognize them, you discover that awakening is not far away. It is the very ground of your being, waiting for you to notice. When these signs of awakening begin to settle into perception, the consequences are not abstract but deeply practical, reshaping how one lives and relates to everything. The first change is in relationships. When the illusion of separation dissolves, it becomes impossible to treat others as completely other. You start to see yourself reflected in every face, every gesture, every being. Conflicts lose their sharp edges, because the drive to defend a fragile ego weakens, and compassion arises, not as a moral duty, but as a natural recognition that harming another is harming yourself. What once felt like endless struggles for validation and dominance softens into a sense of connection, and even the most ordinary interactions carry a depth that was hidden before. This vision also transforms your relationship with nature. The world around you is no longer just scenery or resources to be used, but an extension of your own being. The air you breathe, the food you eat, the ground you walk on all become intimate, inseparable from who you are. The tree is not a distant object but a companion in the same dance of existence. The river is not just water flowing past, but life itself moving in another form. Reverence and care for the natural world flow effortlessly because it is no longer outside of you. Suffering too undergoes a radical shift. Pain may still appear, but the resistance to it, the mental struggle of why me, the fear of what it means, the endless replaying of scenarios, diminishes. Without that extra layer of resistance, pain is felt directly, honestly, but without the weight of suffering. Life becomes lighter, not because problems vanish, but because they are no longer clung to as personal burdens. Joy is experienced more freely, because it is not bound by fear of its loss. And in this space of clarity, existence itself begins to feel like a dance. Life is not a grim battle to be won, but a play unfolding moment by moment, a cosmic performance in which you are both actor and stage. There is a sense of freedom, spontaneity, even humor in the recognition that you are part of a vast, intelligent flow. Every step, every breath, every encounter becomes part of the great dance of being. And instead of carrying life as a weight, you move with it as though in rhythm with music that has been playing all along. The turning point of awakening arrives when the deepest illusion finally dissolves. The belief that you are a stranger in the universe, a fragile consciousness thrown into a vast and indifferent cosmos. For most of life, that is how it feels, small, separate and vulnerable, as if you were a temporary spark destined to be extinguished. But when perception clears, a revelation dawns that changes everything. You realize you are not merely in the universe, you are the universe aware of itself through this particular perspective. You are not an isolated fragment, but an expression of the whole, just as a wave is an expression of the ocean. The wave rises and falls, but at no point is it separate from the water that gives it form. In the same way, your existence is not apart from the totality, but the totality manifesting in this moment as you. This realization is not a lofty theory, but a lived experience. When it breaks through, it carries a power that words can only approximate. The sense of alienation, the endless search for belonging, the fear of being insignificant, these dissolve in the recognition that you have never been outside of reality. You have always been home because you are what the universe is doing here and now. The skin no longer feels like a boundary, but like a temporary form through which the infinite expresses itself. Inside and outside collapse into one movement. Self and other reveal themselves as complementary, inseparable aspects of the same unfolding. The emotional force of this recognition is immense. What once seemed like an existential burden transforms into profound relief. The anxiety of needing to justify your life, to prove your worth, to fight against the current disappears. You are not fighting the current, you are the current. You are life flowing, thinking, breathing, loving, grieving, creating. And because you are not separate, there is nothing to defend, nothing to fear in the same way. To see this is to experience a liberation so complete that it feels like stepping into another dimension of existence, though in truth it is the same dimension you have always inhabited. The only difference is that now you see it clearly. When all these threads are brought together, what emerges is a clear pattern of transformation that defines the essence of spiritual awakening. It begins with the ability to see without filters, to look at life not through the heavy curtain of words and labels, but through the clarity of direct perception. A tree ceases to be just a concept and returns to being the living miracle it always was. This fresh way of seeing naturally unravels the trance of concepts, the spell in which we confuse descriptions with reality. Once you recognize that the voice in your head is not the world but only commentary about the world, you step closer to the immediacy of life as it is. From here comes the recognition of the great illusion. the idea of a separate self locked inside a body, isolated from everything else. Awakening reveals this as a fiction, showing that the ego is only a temporary role, not the essence of what you are. With this illusion dissolved, unity becomes undeniable. You cannot separate yourself from the whole, just as you cannot separate the crest of a wave from the ocean beneath it. Inside and outside, life and death, self and other, are revealed to be inseparable aspects of one movement. In this unity, you also begin to sense the intelligence of the whole. The same mysterious wisdom that grows forests and guides galaxies is what beats your heart and breathes through you. Life is not something you manage. It is something that moves through you effortlessly, and recognizing this brings both humility and trust. With that trust comes freedom from the prison of time, the realization that past and future exist only as thoughts occurring now. The only true reality is the present moment, and to live fully in it is to step into the freshness and sufficiency of being. Finally, all of these insights culminate in the most profound discovery, that what you truly are is not the stream of changing experiences, but the awareness in which those experiences arise. You are not the story, but the silent presence that holds every story. This recognition ties together all the other signs, revealing that awakening is not about becoming something new, but about remembering what has always been the case. To see these 7 signs clearly is to awaken to the simple, extraordinary truth that life is already whole, and that you are not apart from it, but its very expression. All of these words, all of these images, are only pointing. They are fingers indicating the moon, menus describing a feast, photographs of an ocean you have yet to swim in. The danger is always the same, mistaking the description for the thing itself. You can memorize every phrase, analyze every metaphor, and debate the meaning of awakening endlessly, but unless you see it directly for yourself, nothing changes. The awakened do not live by concepts, they live by presence, and presence cannot be borrowed, it cannot be packaged, it cannot be handed to you as a theory. It must be recognized in the immediacy of your own awareness. This is why the invitation is not to think more, but to notice more. Right now, in this very moment, there is breath moving through you. There is the sound of whatever surrounds you. There is sensation in your hands, in your body, in your chest. There is awareness, the silent backdrop in which all of this is appearing. That is where awakening happens, not in the repetition of ideas, but in the raw experience of what is here before thought interprets it. Look at the simplicity of this moment. Feel the ground beneath you, the air against your skin, the rhythm of existence unfolding without effort. This is not theory. This is life itself. So the true question is not whether you understand these 7 signs, but whether you have recognized them in your own life. Have you ever seen reality without filters, even for an instant? Have you noticed that your thoughts are not the same as what is real? Have you glimpsed the illusion of being separate dissolve, or felt unity so deeply that the boundary between yourself and the world blurred? These are not distant ideals. They are available here, now, waiting only for your attention. Which of these signs has already touched you, and which are still waiting to be seen? The invitation is open. Look directly, breathe deeply, and step into the immediacy of what is already present. This is where awakening lives.